Hello and welcome to Season 3 of the No Bullshit Property Podcast, brought to you by CERT Property. I'm Paul.
And I'm Howard.
And today we're talking to Dougie Orton-Wade, our new head of Build to Rent. We'll be diving into his journey, what brought him to CERT, and how he sees the future of Build to Rent. Quick reminder before we start, check out previous episodes to learn more about our approach to transformative property management in the Build to Rent sector and how we're building sustainable communities.
Very good. Some news?
Yes.
So the news for this month. Some positives, which is good, when there's been all the market dramas with Trump's tariffs. But Northwest property prices have surged by around 29% since March 2020, according to the latest figures from home.co.uk. Which is compared with the national average for England and Wales of around 15%. So, yeah, positive that the property market in the Northwest continues to go from strength to strength. Also, average UK monthly private rents have increased by 8.1% in the last 12 months to February 2025. This rate of growth is down from 8.7% in the 12 months to January. So rental growth rates softening slightly, but still very strong growth in rents. And then another big piece of news announced is the volume of investment into the UK build-to-rent market. Very topical for our podcast today. So this was a report by Savills saying that investment volumes had broken records in 2024, reaching the £5 billion mark for the first time, and that's surpassing the previous record of 4.8 billion, which was achieved in 2022. And this growth was driven by a resurgence in international investment, so overseas investors, particularly from North America, who deployed over 1 billion alone in Q4. And also a big proportion of that was investment into single-family housing, which has gained a lot of momentum over the last few years. So, yeah, nice little segue with that piece of news into our episode today, because as Paul just mentioned, Dougie has joined us as our head of Build to Rent. So we're going to be talking about all things Build to Rent and the market and how we're going to be impacting it. But yeah, thank you for joining us today. Do you want to start off by giving a bit of your background and backstory?
Yeah, sure. So I won't bore you with my whole life story. It's not this is your life, but I think there's some important parts of my journey that it's important to discuss today. So all the way back when, so I'm similar to Paul actually, come from a retail background. Actually started working on a market stall when I was 14, and that sort of got me really into the customer service side of things and operations. Pretty hard, intensive job, especially at that age, but it was cash in hand, so I thought let's just do it. So since then, really, I've been quite passionate about customer service. I did leave school when I was 16, and I actually tried to be a professional footballer. I was nowhere near good enough, but that's another story. So left school at 16, left home. Again, learned lots of valuable life lessons from that. Wasn't quite good enough, so then fell into a retail job where I could still play football on the side, but also started earning some full-time money. Toyed with the idea of going back to college, but it was never quite for me. I've never been that into education, especially from a school perspective. And anyway, so then just moved up the ranks quite quickly in retail. So became a manager really early on, 21 years old. I think I was running my own store. And it was not just the money, but I had, like I say, a real passion for operations, customer service experience and efficiency. So joined Superdry back when it was very, very small. Didn't have a store at all then. And then spent the next few years going around the country, opening different stores for them. Moved down south, and I moved actually from down south in Bournemouth, moved up to Manchester, and that's why I'm in Manchester now. That's how it all began. That was like 15 years ago or something now. But yeah, then so fast forward 13 years later, spent many years managing stores, managing regions from a retail perspective, Came to a bit of a dead end actually in retail. It was just about at the same time as the e-commerce world took off. Everything was online. Lots of stores were closing down. I actually worked for Topshop, Topman at the time, and Arcadia, as we all know, sort of disappeared. Or the Topshop, Topman arm did anyway. And yeah, just very, very stuck of where to go. So I was nearly 30. I was just really confused about where I should go. Didn't have the qualifications, didn't go to university, learned lots of soft skills, but nothing on paper. So academic on paper. And then I just stumbled across student property management. So that was, obviously I hadn't been to university. I didn't have anything to benchmark against. But when I went into some of these student schemes, they were very much, similar to what the high-end build-to-rent products is now. They were highly amenitized, not student accommodation like my friend's student accommodation was. It was, cinema rooms, movie rooms, gyms, providing breakfast, all-encompassing service levels, really smart designs. And these students were paying big rents. But yeah, I kind of immediately fell in love with it. Thought this is absolutely up my street. It was everything that I wanted from my job. But, if I'm completely honest, a lot of it was down to the fact that it was sociable hours. So retail's very unsociable. Actually, a job that gave me all of that stuff, but I could do it Monday to Friday, generally speaking. That was everything to me at that point. So yeah, quite quickly just threw myself into property management, and then managed a few different sites in student, mobilized a scheme in student for Vita Student. But again, just quite quickly learned that actually I really enjoyed lots of elements of the job, but it didn't feel it had the longevity. I didn't feel like I could make as much of a difference there because, as we know, it's pretty cyclical, the student market. And we'd get the natural churn of the students coming and going every year. And a lot of these students that were paying that sort of price were overseas students. So again, fostering that sense of community was quite difficult to build long-term relationships. So yeah, and again, didn't realize the build to rent world existed, or it pretty much didn't actually back then. So an opportunity came to me to move into the build to rent space as a general manager and go and launch one of Manchester's first schemes. So I don't think we can say it was the first, but it was one of the first. So it eventually launched in 2019. It was the Trilogy in Manchester and Castlefield. Really successful scheme. We leased up in 6 months, I think, went straight to number one on all the home views. Really successful launch. And then, again, just sort of fell in love with build to rent. And I think my successes over the years have all been because I worked in retail. So for many years, I probably felt that my time in retail was a bit of a waste of time. That's the way that was a narrative I was spinning for myself. But then joining the property world, it kind of made me realize, actually, I've learned so many valuable skills, not just soft skills, but operational efficiency. It's what retail's built on. And I've been able to translate that into property, specifically build to rent, because there is so much that's transferable. And because I feel like my success has been built on thinking from the sort of the inside out. And again, I will speak about retail quite a bit because I do think there's a lot to be learned from it. And that's very much the mindset of, in retail, you think about, a successful retail business would think, let's look at your back of house first. What do your stock rooms look like? What do your stock levels look like? How's your reporting? How efficient are you? Because if that's perfect, then everything on the shop floor will be good. That generally speaking. And I think that can be said for build to rent as well. And then worked for a few years with Allsop, various roles again, general manager, asset manager, working with different institutional investors and launching and mobilizing different schemes. And then I joined Natives, head of operations, and just recently done a short spell at Dandara as well. So I've worked for 3 of the big operators now, all great in their own rights, and I've learned a lot along the way. But yeah, I just it's taken me to this point now.
Very good, yeah.
That's the background.
It's interesting, the comments you make about retail, because we've said it a number of times when we're looking at hiring into the business. actually really value someone who's got retail experience or F&B experience on their CV, because you are so service focused. And if that's something that the real estate industry is trying to translate into a service offering with build to rent or with student, having that experience is a massive bonus, because I think real estate is getting to grips with that service provision still. It's still a journey, whereas retail has been doing it for 100 years plus, being service focused. So
absolutely, and I know we'll probably come on to this question, but one of my aspirations is that we need to change the mindset, and actually there's a notion in the build to rent space of, and understandably so, it's been born out of I suppose it came from the old-fashioned estate agency property management world, which is fine. So that therefore means that there's a lot of people still in the sector that have come from that background. So we still have the landlord and tenant mindset, and that's fine because there's a need for that in certain scenarios. But because I come from a business to consumer background, then I think that's the narrative and the notion that needs to change and evolve. So for me, it's very much like we need to sort of just do what it says on the tin. Our residents that live with us are customers, they're consumers, and I don't think we should shy away from that fact. We talk about them as residents and tenants, but ultimately it's a service that they're paying for. So if we can see it as a service, and I think the renters reforms will mean we have to do that even more, we'll have better success in the build to rent space if we see it that way.
So jumping on to something there you mentioned, so renters reform, what do you think the impact's going to be for build to rent and landlords?
Yeah, it's a bit of an unknown. I think there's understandably quite a bit of nervousness around the renters reform. And I think the implications will be felt a lot more on the sort of private the private landlords. Landlords that have one or two properties will probably be more impacted. And again, going back to that service level, if we can provide a great service and build to rent, it will encourage people to stay. The reality is that people, there is a good chance that there will be a lot more transients. So people will cotton on to the fact that they can move in and move out as they please, and then it does become a lot more akin to a hospitality offering, which is not the worst thing in the world. It means that we have to up our game, and again, I think that's one of the pros. It should, in my opinion, encourage people to higher their expectations and deliver a better service level, because retention will become one of the number one things that we do. And on top of that, community and placemaking, all that will become really, really important. They're important now, but even more so. So operated a couple of schemes in Scotland recently. So you probably know that the Scottish laws are different. There's a PRT up there, the private rented tenancies, and they are 28 days notice. So you can hand your notice in at any point when you move in Scotland. And when you review the data and the analysis, the tenancy lengths are shorter up there. So, and relatively, I think quite a bit shorter actually. So on really generally speaking, in England, build to rent tenancies, I'd say around 18 months in length, give or take a few months. In Scotland, you're probably looking at more 10, 11 months. So it does mean that there's going to be more transients. It's a lot more difficult to model. Your expiration curve is going to be completely, well, it's not going to exist in effect, because there'll be a small periodic, fixed term at the beginning, and then it will just go into a periodic. So it will be very difficult to plan. But it can only be a good thing if we think about this from the renter's perspective, and I'm somebody that's rented for many years, having that added level of security there. So knowing that you've got your security of tenure, you're not just going to get chucked out by the landlord at any point, is a good thing. And I think like I say, it'll just impact the private landlords more so. And I think the important part of this for me is there's the talk about strengthening the sort of eviction process and the mandatory grounds and the court proceedings. that all needs to improve. There's no doubt about it, because at the minute it's not fit for purpose. So that for me is a risk. It's understanding, okay, well, the government are bringing these legislation changes in, that's fine, but what are they actually doing to improve those court processes? Because otherwise it's going to be a real risk if there's people not paying rent, and we can't evict them. So that's going to be a challenge, but that's yet to be seen, I guess.
Yeah, we will see. We will see. So, as you said there, you've worked across a number of the big names in the build-to-rent space. Why have you joined us? What are you here to do?
Yeah, no, good question. I'm probably going to sound quite cliche here, but I think, I know for me, energy is really, really important. So energy and alignment, like cultural alignment, is so important. And I felt that when we've spoke, I've watched some of these podcasts as well, and I've just realised that actually we have lots of shared values. We've had lots of conversations about where we see the sector going and how we want to do things differently, and all of those pieces of terminology there. The transformative manager of spaces and places, and doing things differently, and it's sort of innate in me. I've always thought that things could be done differently, and I don't even necessarily think it. I know it because I've seen it, I've experienced it over the years, and I've been finessing my OPEX budgets to the nth degree over many years now. So I know it can be done differently. It's just, I feel like I've sort of found a business that truly wants to make that difference and that leap of faith into the unknown almost, to prove that we can do this differently. And that was just really important to me, and also just the CERT reputation. You spent many years building that brand reputation, that network. It is a cradle to grave offering now. We do get involved with design, planning, placemaking, developing, building, and now managing. It's end to end. We've got the experience, and that just really excited me. And I think it's a great brand. And on top of that, the CERT Life app that you've been creating over the last couple of years, I think that's going to be, I don't think it's going to be again. I know it's going to be market leading. It does some really, really good stuff that's actually been missing from the build to rent space for a number of years now. And there's a lot of tech out there. There's a lot of processes and systems. There are apps that already operate relatively well. And they're all, I suppose, good in their own ways. But this feels different. It feels different. It feels exciting, and there's a lot of value that we can add on both sides. So to our clients and to our customers, I really see a value on both sides to this app. And I wouldn't have joined if I didn't see that.
Yeah, no, for us, it's it kind of goes back to what you started out saying. We've spent 7 years building the systems, the back of house bit, getting all of that right on the management side of the business, haven't we? And learning some lessons the hard way, making changes, but constantly challenging, why are we doing this way? Why are we doing it that way? And you're right, one of the aspects when we first started looking at build to rent and focusing on it as a sector was, well, the customer service. You've got your physical service, yes, but similar to what you said about shops, most people's interactions are now online. So yeah, you might have a great physical service in your build to rent block and loads of really nice events and a very friendly person on the front desk.
Yeah.
But actually, that isn't the whole picture. The digital aspect has to be good as well. And looking at what was out there, it was all very functional. And it's creating that service level in the digital as well as the physical
100%.
that made absolute sense to us, and started us on the journey of developing our own app, which has got a range of features that I think are market leading, which we're still trying to improve and better. So yeah, I think like you say, when we sat down and had a chat and had this shared vision of build to rent can be better.
Can be better.
the service can be better, the experience can be better. And yeah, ultimately it's brought us together to deliver that.
Yeah, exactly. And it has to be better. You know, there's what is it now? Over 120,000 build to rent operational homes. It's still only just over 2% of the private rented space. There's millions of people out there that still don't know what it is, and that's fair enough, like understandably so. And we all work in it, we hear about it and see it every single day. But there's a whole world out there that have no clue that this exists and what they can actually be getting for rent. And there's this sort of narrative out there of build to rent being a choice, you know. And I think there's definitely elements of that are true, but I think we have to, again, just be realistic. And ultimately, people live in build to rent schemes, generally speaking, because they can't afford to buy a house. And it may be more short-term thinking. It is more short-term thinking, and we need to, again, accept that. And that leads back into service levels, because build to rent is unique. It's its own asset class. It's not hospitality. It's not retail. It's not student. It's not the sort of block management PRS. It's completely different. And I feel that, again, there's just been, I wouldn't say it's lazy. I think it's just because it's such a nascent sector, we've not had the data behind us to know consumer behaviours. We've not had the data behind us of how to design the scheme, what appliances we should put in, what we shouldn't, what amenities, what we shouldn't. So we are starting to get that now. We've built up over the last 10 years real good data sets to show actually what people want and what people need and how we can maximize profit. And for me, it is really, really important to have the right tech and have the right human element in equal measures. Because again, there's different sort of notions that I hear about the human element will never be taken away. It always needs the human element. And again, I agree with that to an extent, but we can't be lazy about it. We need to analyze, we need to scrutinize every single square foot of a building and make sure that it's given as return on investment. And because CERT have designed buildings, they've got experience doing that. And again, that's what felt different for me and what feels different for me for CERT as an operator. Because we've got the end-to-end and the experience. So,
So, for those listening and watching, what exactly will your role entail as head of build to rent here?
You tell me. I mean, look, ultimately we want to grow. We want to be the market leading build to rent operator, and we all believe that we can. And again, I wouldn't be here if we didn't believe that we can. But I think what's quite exciting for me is we are in I suppose we're in a luxury position really, where we can build this out. We can take all of our collective learnings from commercial property management, block management, property management, build to rent, development, all of those different facets. We can bring them all together to create something really special from the outset. You know, we've got our very first building launching in October this year. We've already launched the CERT Life app, which is so exciting. So modeling all that out is going to be part of my role, but also just growing, I guess, just making sure we get out there. We increase brand awareness. We offer our services out there, and we become a manager of choice for institutional investors over the next few years. And we're going to focus predominantly, initially on the north and northwest. But who knows where that will go to? Like we know that we can do it, and we've got a track record in the northwest already. So it makes sense for us to focus on that ecosystem initially. But yeah, my role is very much about growing the build to rent offering and evolving.
And we've got a bit of work to do, I think, alongside that, in just a bit of a reframing of how we're seen, because I think a lot of people in the industry, locally, definitely, or who have known us for a while, see us as a developer first, and the property management is incidental to that, when actually it's the other way round. You know, we want to create places that people want to live, that people want to work, and we believe that through our collective experience, the tech that we've developed, we can manage those spaces and create these communities within them. We're developing them to fill gaps where we see them. You know, first and foremost, we want to manage these spaces. But if those spaces don't exist, then yes, we're developing them and creating them. So I think that's a bit of a reframing we need to do of our perception. But that will happen as we gather momentum on the build to rent operations. And like you say, you know, we're just on the cusp of that with our first own developed scheme completing later this year. We've got another one due to complete next year. We've got our first small scale single family scheme to complete next year as well, which will be a new experience for us and an exemplar scheme there. So it will change as these come on stream, and you know, as we take on third-party management instructions as well. So yeah, it's an exciting time to be here. So good timing.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mentioned single family there.
Yeah.
And mentioned it earlier in the news. It's now such a large part of the build to rent sector from an investment perspective. And it's even more kind of new territory in terms of service offering, service expectations. What's your kind of thoughts around single family, where it's going, opportunities, all of the above?
Well, I think the opportunities are endless. The data's already showing that. So I think I saw of the 5 billion that was invested, that's sort of 40% was single family. So, you know, that's such a large number, and that's the growth on that year on year is exponential. So it's definitely the direction of travel. I think there's a lot more interest in it now. There's more, it's I suppose it's just educational really, that the institutional investment out there knows more about it now, and there is more case studies to look at to show that it does work. There's the obvious reasons to go into single family, i.e. it's got a longer average tenancy length. It's generally speaking cheaper to rent in single family housing. There's a lack of housing. There's so much need for housing. The Labour government have committed to 1.5 million homes. And it's sort of that natural next step. And when we look at the sort of full life cycle of the rental world, you would expect people to want to live in single family housing for a lot longer. So that brings security, it's security from a lending perspective and the security of tenure. And it can run a lot leaner than what your urban build to rent would. And that's probably the attraction there, because your OPEX can be a lot different to what it would be in an urban build to rent scheme. I think what's exciting for me, again, from a CERT perspective, is that we already kind of do that. You know, we already offer those services from a property management perspective, and all of our tenants, customers will be put onto the CERT Life app, whether they live in one of the blocks that we manage, leasehold, build to rent, or single family. They'll all experience that same tech offering. And the reality is that the single family market can't offer the full 24-hour service with a concierge and, parcel management system. I'm sure that will come at some point, but for now, it's very much just a housing estate that needs that additional layer of service, which comes from the tech, because it's not there in physical terms. You haven't got your cinema rooms or your gym. So that tech offering is even more important in single family. So yeah, we're really excited to explore what that looks like. And like I say, it seems like the natural progression from people that are living in urban build to rent schemes, maybe have a family, maybe want to move out of town, to be able to offer that as a seamless journey into the next rental development. Then I think that's quite interesting and exciting. So yeah, see a lot of growth.
Yeah, and the model's a bit less obvious with the single family. With the multifamily, it's obvious in that you've got your building, you've got your facilities in it, everyone lives in that building, and you manage the whole block. With the single family, different investors are approaching it differently. A lot of it is, as you say, housing estates where an investor may have bought a collection of houses on there, or some are just buying individual houses in locations. So it's going to be interesting to see where expectations land for people who are looking to rent a single family house rather than an apartment. Is there still that expectation of amenities? There'll certainly be the service level expectation, but how that can be serviced in these different models. I mean, for us, saying before, our purpose of developing is filling gaps in the market where we see them existing. And, we focus quite heavily on single family being purpose built, i.e. not a housing estate where, 2/3 of them are sold and a third are rented, but delivering an estate which might be houses and might be apartments on there as well, but delivering it as a purpose built offering. And, we've not really seen that done anywhere else, but it enables you then to have some on-site amenities, still have the post storage, parcel storage within, an apartment building on the site. You can, depending on the scale, potentially still have, co-working facilities, stuff like that on there. So, bringing the amenities in to a single family offering, it's not really been done, but I mean, that's been our focus on developing sites outside of the city. We've got a couple coming through the pipeline, and it'll be interesting to see investors' response and evolution of their interest. Will it move towards that model in the single family where investors are actually going, well, no, we won't just buy a block of houses off a house builder. We want purpose-built single family.
It's really interesting because I think it's just a shift. It's a complete shift in the sort of tenant needs and wants. And community's always been important. But I think, again, like within the build to rent space, the way that people spin the community narrative is very much about, it needs to be a team on site, we need to do physical events, and it's all about having a concierge in front of house. And actually, is it that? Because what we do is, going to our sort of strap line is transforming spaces and places. And that's about a feeling and it's about energy. And if you can put it on there, you can have the physical amenity, that's wonderful. But what excites me about what we can do, especially with our tech, is the commercial partnerships. So the partnerships we can have in the broader, wider community, and we can bring community in rather than put community outwards. And I think I've used this terminology a few times now, and that's looking from the outside in instead of the inside out. A lot of the times, urban build to rent schemes or single family, actually, they may be curated in an insular way. So they operate very much in their own four walls, and all your events are for your residents and your residents only. And you might get a couple of discounts at some local bars or restaurants, but we're not bringing the local businesses in first. And that for me is a completely different model, and that's what we need to do better. And I think that's what we already do well and actually can do and evolve even better, which is really exciting, because I think in reality, like I said earlier, the tenure lengths are short and expectations are high. So your physical amenity is important from a rental value perspective, and it's a good hook and it's a good USP. But the reason that people leave is not because you haven't got a bowling alley or even a gym, it's not why they leave. Usually people leave, two reasons really. I guess they've either got personal circumstances where they are just leaving, buying a house, or they're moving abroad, whatever, or they're not happy with an element of their experience. And that often is their apartment. It could be the storage in their apartment, or the size, or the noise complaints, or whatever it might be. Or usually it's a service thing, and that might be service in terms of response times, security, just having a point of contact. And we can do all of those things with our tech, whether it be urban or suburban. And actually just having that sense of belonging is so important to most people. And I feel like we've got a bit of a unique offering there, where we can offer that not just within the scheme that we manage, but actually bringing in all of the local community externally into our schemes. That's where I feel like there's a massive opportunity there. There's more partnerships. It's less insular, more partnerships, community as a place-making thing rather than just a curation of site-specific events, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely does.
So yeah, interesting.
It is.
Very good. A lot of ground covered there.
Yeah.
So I think if anybody listening wants to speak to Dougie and find out a bit more about our offering, you can contact him through the website or through our socials.
Yep, absolutely. Very exciting time, as I say, and a real opportunity for us to go out there and bring a different perspective to built-to-rent management. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think the one thing I would say is my, I suppose the way that I operate and my vision is very much from it's experience, but it has to be efficient. There's no point in saying you want to give a 5-star service and we're going to do all these bells and whistles, but you're not making any money. Like it's not going to work for our investors. It's not going to work for the consumer ultimately, because that's not how these schemes operate sustainably, and they're just not going to be viable. So what we can do, again, just thinking about this is very much a retail approach. Again, it's the sort of inside out approach. So we start with the budget, you start with your OPEX, and you go down that absolutely granularly, line by line, make sure, like, let's get it to as lean as we possibly can first, and then we'll layer up as needed, as required. But let's see how lean we can operate these schemes using the tech that we've got, so that our gross to net is reduced and the cost per unit is reduced to as low as it can possibly be, because there's no hiding from the fact that inflation's a real thing. You've got the national insurance costs now, which are sort of skyrocketed. So it's becoming a lot more difficult now to staff schemes. And that's just inevitable, isn't it? And again, it's how the hospitality industry's gone, it's how the retail, and that is going to happen. We'll have to learn how to operate these schemes in a lot more lean way. So I feel like we are really well set up to be able to deliver that. So that's the point that I really wanted to make sure that we got across today.
No, absolutely. Got to do it differently.
Yeah.
And it starts here.
Indeed.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Very insightful.
No problem.
And yeah, we'll get you back on in 12 months' time. We can see how the
how it's
journey's
going.
gone.
Yeah. Hopefully, anyway.
Good stuff.
Okay, thanks for tuning into the No Bullshit Property Podcast. If you like this episode, let us know on Instagram at CERT_property, and let us know what you'd like to see more of. You check out previous episodes to learn more about our approach to transformative property management in the build-to-rent sector and how we're building sustainable communities.